answered
right
yes.
out of that question. Amazing.
So that's that. Now let's move on to the issue of 15-minute cities. And a question was recently asked about that in the House of Commons as well. A lot fewer people in the chamber for this particular question, but let's have a listen to Neil Fletcher, MP.
Nick Fletcher.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will the leader please set aside some time in this House for a debate on the international socialist concept of so-called 15-minute cities and 20-minute neighbourhoods? Ultra-low emission zones in their present form do untold economic damage to any city. However, the second step after these zones will take away personal freedoms as well. Sheffield is already on this journey, and I do not want Doncaster, which is also a Labour-run socialist council, to do the same. Low emission zones cost the taxpayer money, simple as. However, 15-minute cities will cost us our personal freedom, and that cannot be right.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman. Whatever the motivations for this new policy, which some councils are adopting, I think that the hard-working people of this country, their lives are complicated enough, especially at the moment when we're trying to boost the local economy. We're trying to get tradesmen and sole traders being able to boost their income. I think it's right that people raise concerns about this particular kind of policy, and of course we would want to see that where such policies were being forwarded, that local communities were being properly consulted.
Right, so that was Nick Fletcher, not Neil Fletcher, apologies, MP, and that was Penny Mordaunt at the end. Now, Penny Mordaunt, of course, ran for Prime Minister. She seemed to give a slightly more reasonable answer to the question than Rishi Sunak was prepared to give to the previous question, so maybe the Tory party made the wrong choice there. But nonetheless, Nick Fletcher then tweeted a little bit more out about this. So here we go. Ultra low emission zones in their present format do untold economic damage to any city. However, the second step after ULEZ is this so-called 15-minute cities or 20-minute neighbourhoods. These will take away your personal freedoms as well. Bristol, Oxford, Canterbury are signed up for them, as is now Sheffield Council. See their minutes of 2nd February 2022. And he gives a link to that. Is there in there it's minuted that Sheffield Council resolved quotes, notes Metro Mayor Dan Jarvis's calls to transformer infrastructure for cycling and walking and put in place the building blocks for compact and livable 15-minute neighbourhoods. Fletcher goes on and therefore calls on him and his successor to act on this and work with Sheffield Council to make 15-minute neighbourhoods a reality across our area. I do not want Doncaster, which is also a Labour-run socialist council, to do the same. Ultra low emission zones cost the taxpayer money, simple as. However, 15-minute cities will cost us our personal freedom and cannot be right. Then he goes on to say, I believe in net zero and in having a strong local economy and encourage us all to do our bit, but destroying our towns and cities and keeping us prisoners in our communities is not the way. So, well, I would question his belief in net zero. I would suggest he needs to do a bit more research there, but nonetheless, he making a very valid point. So let's imagine what could possibly have happened in the mainstream press about this, Patrick. Well, let's bring Forbes on and see what they had to say. Tory MP uses conspiracy theory in UK Parliament against 15-minute city concept. In Parliament earlier today, the Conservative MP Nick Fletcher used a conspiracy theory against the concept of the 15-minute city. And let's get another quote from this. Instead of dismissing his complaint about the proximity of people to shops, Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House of Commons, replied that it was right that people raised concerns about this particular kind of policy. And then what do? They try to drag the anti-Semitism trope in as well. So on GB News, a relatively new British free-to-air television and radio news channel, the broadcaster and historian Neil Oliver recently complained about 15-minute cities, saying, we'll be expected to walk or cycle. Do you see the scam yet? They advertise a world of electric cars, but what we'll end up buying is lives lived on foot within 15 minutes of our homes. And then the article goes on to bring in the whole issue of the recent furore over Neil Oliver's alleged anti-Semitic coverage of juries and so on. The response to this was absolutely pathetic.
Well, look at the author. I mean, look at his slug under his author. It says, I've been writing about transport for 30 years. I think it's Carlton Reed or something like
Right.
that. Right. So that's the last guy you want writing about this because he's been on staff for 30 years. So isn't it amazing how they piece things together to create their own conspiracy? Like this is a conspiracy of conspiracy theorists. And we should now, it's funny, Neil Oliver has become the whipping boy
Yeah.
of the establishment for conspiracy theories. He's gonna basically unseat David Icke as the country's most prominent conspiracy theorist if the mainstream media have their way. It's a complete joke. And you know what else is interesting? If you look at this thread by Nick Fletcher on Twitter, you have these openly self-declared communists in various accounts coming in and attacking him. And so this is totally political. But what's the most important thing I heard from that statement? I don't agree with his net zero. I think Nick Fletcher has to get educated on the whole climate change farrago and what a scam net zero is. But he brought up an important point. These are all being done, these policies are being put in by stealth by local government without public consultation.
Right.
Totally undemocratic. So you have these radical labor local government operatives, probably a minority of local government pushing this. It must be centrally managed from some place, but it's being done by stealth. What
Right.
if you had open hearings and public consultation? What do you think the public would say about these?
Indeed. And if you want to know about how it's being brought in by stealth, get on the UK Column website, search for Global Parliament of Mayors or C40 cities and a whole host of other global
the assembly,
governments.
what do they call it?
Global Parliament of Mayors.
And locally, what do they call? There's the assembly. What was the local assemblies? The people's assemblies. What were they called?
Yeah, but that is related. But nonetheless, have a search for those two terms in particular, and you'll see that we've been covering this for many years now. This drive towards making the metro mayors and the mayors agenda around the world, make them drive forward with this global net zero policy, 15-minute cities, and so on. So do have a search on the UK Column website for that.
And people like George Monbiot are really backing these types of initiatives, as are the World Economic Forum.
Indeed.
Surprise, surprise.
Indeed. Okay, look, we're absolutely out of time. Please join us if you're a UK Column member for extra in a couple of minutes. But otherwise, we'll be back at 1 p.m. on Monday as usual. Brian away all next week, but don't worry, we've got plenty to cover in the meantime. Thank you very much to Vanessa for joining us. Thank you, Patrick. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.